Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Okay. We'll wait a couple more minutes. As you come in, please try to mute yourself. We're getting a little bit of feedback from somebody.
What?
There's some feedback coming through, so as you come in, if you could just make sure you hit your mute button, that'd be really appreciative. All right, well, I feel like people are probably going to still trickle in as we go. I know we had some more signed up, but I will just get started because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you for coming again to another Tuesdays at 2 with Haven. If you've been here before, thanks for coming again. If you've never been here, thanks for joining this time. Please, just as you come in, hit your mute button so that we don't get any feedback and everybody can hear okay. We're really glad you're here, and we're really excited to talk about outdoor spaces, even though today is not the greatest day in Chicago to use your outdoor space. We still are excited for the weather that is to come, for when we can do it. And we just wanted to help you out in terms of prepping the space, because there's a lot to think about when you're planning an outdoor area. Whether you have a tiny balcony or you're lucky enough to have a really big backyard you're trying to style, I think everyone is just really itching to get outside and utilize their outdoor space, especially during our shelter in place and stay at home. Not only is it really relaxing to be in an outdoor space, it also is really a stress reliever to be around nature in general. Yeah. So we definitely want to focus on that as well. Once again, sorry, just make sure you're muted when you come in here. We're getting a little bit of feedback. I just want to make sure everybody can hear okay. If you have any questions during our chat today, please type them in the chat box. We'll try to get to any and all questions. And just to note that all of the slides that you're seeing today will be sent via email after the session is over to everybody who's in attendance. So you will get a copy of everything that you see here. So I'm also joined today by Julie Gathman, who is one of our designers at Haven, and Denise Hedden, who is our operations manager. Julie, Denise, and myself all have outdoor spaces that we've revamped at some point, and so we're also going to share our own spaces today and how we've applied some of the tips and tricks that we're going to walk you through. So again, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and yeah, we'll also provide some resources at the end, some links and stuff like that. Okay, so today we're going to chat about going from idea to install in your space. This includes planning your layout, determining your budget, and then layering your space with accessories, pillows, things like that. We're going to talk about some outdoor materials to use for furniture and rugs, and also how to maintain those materials. We're gonna talk about styling with plants, lights, accessories, and we're also gonna be talking about our own patios. So like I said, we're gonna share our personal patios from start to finish for how we made them. So we'll start with just a few general planning tips. These steps are gonna just help you set up for success as you begin planning your outdoor space. Whether you're revamping one or starting from scratch, everything in this list is good to think about each and every time. And each of these points we'll dive a little deeper into during the session. So first, you want to identify your focal point and determine your layout. So your focal point is basically what does your space need to work around? So maybe you have a fire pit or a fireplace outdoors that you want to angle all your furniture around. Maybe it's as simple as just your coffee table being the center focal point of your space. Something that will anchor the space and sort of be the center. Then what you can do is you can determine your zones. So zones are, you can have one for lounging, one for dining if you're lucky enough to have that much space. And zones just help determine how much furniture you can fit in your outdoor space. And also within each zone, you'll have a specific layout. So also this is, of course, a good time to recognize possible limitations of your space. Because a lot of us don't have a huge area that we can make 3 or 4 zones out of. All of us probably wish that we could, especially now, but that's not reality for everyone. So just think about too what you want to use the space for and make that your priority. And we're going to talk about maximizing small spaces in a bit. Once you have your designated zone and your layout, you want to definitely measure, take a lot of measurements, and think about types of furniture. If you can fit a sofa, what's the measurement that will fit in your space? If you're going to do chairs, how many can you fit? Things like that. And Julie's going to talk a little bit more about this as well. Along with, you need to determine a budget. How much are you willing to spend on your outdoor space? What sorts of things are you willing to spend more money on and less money on? Things like that. You also want to consider lighting in your space. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and lighting can be really tricky. Some spaces have prefixed lighting, some do not, and so you have to get a little creative for how you can add that into your space. And lastly, the layering in of the furniture, accessories, and textiles. So adding in those elements that really make the space unique and warm. Okay, so you've decided on your layout, maybe your zones, you know the size of what you need. Now you need to determine your budget and you need to choose an overall look and color scheme. Julie's going to dive a little deeper into what this looks like.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, so starting with a budget is always a great place. The thing about design is that it's a puzzle that has like a million correct pieces that fit together. So really setting your budget is where you're going to find that you're going to have the parameters outlined for you that you can work within in terms of where you can shop, what your budget should be, and how to stay on track without getting overwhelmed with the number of options that are out there. Your budget will also dictate, also to what stores you can be at and where you should be at and your price points for these selections, as well as the, it can be used like a weigh scale. If you want to invest more money into something that's more important to you, you can take it out of the other things that aren't as important, or the things that are a little bit more flexible or can be moved in and out. So you really can balance your budget that way in terms of getting the most for your investment. You can also really start to think about the way you're going to position your furniture in your outdoor space. But with urban living, as we all are in the city, people tend to move around a lot. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that you're thinking in terms of your current space and your next space. So you might not want to invest $500 in an outdoor sofa if the next place you move into might be a high rise that doesn't have an outdoor balcony. So just keep those things in mind as you're looking through all the selections and pulling the pieces that are most important. But conversely, if you are looking to buy something that's really durable and you know that you'll use it for a while, then it's okay to put that part of the budget a little bit higher to save on other things. You can reduce in places like accessories, candles, and decor. That stuff it comes and goes, and it's usually fairly inexpensive. So if you want to put more money into the higher price point pieces to begin with, that's always a good place to start as well. Then you're going to want to determine a color scheme and a style. So just like how we would approach a room when we consider the factors that we're putting in for staging, we want to do the same thing with an outdoor space. So a good place to start with that is to start by leading with a color scheme or a style that suits the space, and then working towards pulling it all together. So this process happens in designing your own space as much as it happens in staging or in designing for commercial space too. That said, outdoor furniture and accessory options have really come a long way in the last few years, and you can find items that fit pretty much any design style or anything that's in your taste, and also all the colors that you need to find it in as well. So we find it's best to start with your larger pieces, and we would recommend that you would select those to be in a neutral, and then you can layer in the pops of color with the accessories. But this way, your larger purchases will last longer if they're in the neutral family, because you can start to ebb and flow with the smaller things. Like you can change the color of your rug and the color of your pillows a little bit easier than you can just change the whole style of a sofa, and your investment would be lower in that as well. Once you have all your pieces and you're ready to put everything in place, we would recommend that you would place your seating first. So tables, anchoring pieces, the space that really sets the elements of your outdoor area. To note, Emily Henderson, who's just doing some really fun things online with her outdoor spaces, she mentions that you want to have a mixture of seating styles. And that's because you use outdoor space in different ways. Maybe sometimes you have people over and you're entertaining, and other times you're just curled up with a book outside and warming yourself by the fire pit. So having a couple different views of seating or options for seating is always a great way to keep the space incorporated with a lot of different elements as well. Then you'd want to start to unify the coordinating pieces with pulling out similarities that they have, whether that's in wood tones or in shapes and colors and sizes. And Denise has a really good example of this on her space. So keeping those things coordinated and talking to each other is really helpful. But if you do have a smaller outdoor space, we'd recommend that you just choose one color scheme, one good pop of color, and then use variations of the shade of that color throughout the space. It really does help to keep it a little bit calmer in there. If you have a larger outdoor space, going with 2 to 3 pops of color is great, because that's going to give your space allows more places for your eye to rest in doing so. So the other important thing to think about when you're planning your outdoor space is the type of materials that you're going to be bringing into the space and how to protect them. It's important to consider the weather and the elements of wherever you're located. And here in Chicago, we get all 4 extreme seasons. So we want to make sure that we take that into account. And also not just the protection, but whether or not you have the storage for some of these items as well. So especially important for planning outdoor spaces, we want to make sure that we're taking care of all these features. And I'm going to turn over to Denise now and let her discuss a little bit more about the materials for your outdoor pieces.
Thanks, Julie. Let's dig into choosing materials for your space. For furniture, wood is a natural and durable material. It can take a beating in an outdoor space, but it might require refinishing and repainting every now and then to stay looking at its best. Metals like aluminum are nice and light and rust resistant, but you want to make sure you have a way to tie them down in heavy wind situations. There's also a material called all-weather wicker, which is resin-based, and it's woven to look like wicker furniture, but it's more durable than wicker outside and won't rot. And polypropylene is a plastic that's being used more and more for its durability, especially as you'll see coming up for things like outdoor rugs and furniture. It's mold and mildew resistant and super strong, and since it's plastic, it tends to be a cheaper material to purchase as well. There's also Sunbrella fabric is the name brand for a really solid weather resistant. You see it a lot on pillows and cushions on outdoor couches and love seats. And I can attest to, I've had some pillows for several years, I think even 4, and they still, maybe just now, are starting to fade despite having like direct sunlight pretty much constantly. Recycled materials are thankfully becoming more available due to demand, but they are harder to find. Pretty much every major retailer has at least a couple items made of recycled materials, but maybe more of a hunt to find the ones you love. Looking at materials for outdoor rugs specifically, that polypropylene can be woven to look like a wool rug, but it's outdoor friendly. Vinyl, if you have a screened-in porch, more of a like covered space, you can use vinyl plank lock-in flooring. It's totally waterproof. And some are making vinyl mats that resemble rugs that are super easy to clean and highly durable. And just a note from these manufacturers that those need to be used more in the covered patio setting. And there's polyester, so synthetic similar to polypropylene. It's more fade resistant, so great for really sunny areas, and it's often combined with polypropylene. In line with these materials, you want to look at protecting your furniture. So furniture covers, I know myself, I utilize these to the fullest. They're typically made of canvas, polyester, or vinyl, so they can stand up to rain and wind as best as possible. They're also great for warding off sun exposure, which can cause furniture and fabric, especially to color fade. And they're especially relevant with pigeons here in Chicago, or I've noticed geese flying lower and lower. So it's great to protect your furniture from bird poop as well. So, keep an eye out on the forecast and throw on those covers if there's a big storm coming or a few like ultra sunny days in a row. You can also use fabric protectors on outdoor textiles that'll suffer the most wear and tear. After cleaning the fabric, you can follow the manufacturer's instructions, apply a fabric protector as needed. Usually they're like in a spray format. You just want to make sure you're using a protector that's recommended for the type of fabric on the item, and there's a few like that are useful across like different forms of at least the fabric over pillows and cushions on couches. Refinishing or coating every season or every other season can be necessary. For finished metal and aluminum pieces, you can apply a coating of paste wax to protect from corrosion. If the metal pieces are painted, there's already corrosion, you can lightly sand off the corrosion and apply a fresh coat of primer and paint. And for wooden furniture, you can apply like a waterproof sealant to prevent warping and cracks in the wood. Though due to my own experience, I would recommend if you're in a space that has like direct sunlight much of the day, most days, like wood does not really stand up over time. So unless you want to spend a lot of time refinishing, it's probably not your best bet. So you've done all the hard work, determine your layout budget, probably pick some furniture. The last step is really setting the mood of your space, and that comes from styling. So I'm going to turn this over to Lydia to talk through that.
Thank you, Denise. So yeah, styling with Greenery is kind of a no-brainer in terms of a patio space. Obviously, you're trying to be out there to enjoy the nature, so might as well put it all around you. But there's lots of different ways to do that. And I think especially in Chicago, it's important to note that if you are going to plant real plants, whether it's in a pot or a garden bed or anything on your space, it's really great to go to garden centers and actually talk to the experts there. The reason for that is that plants are given like a zone in terms of what types of climate they need in order to really do their best. And Chicago actually has a huge range of those zone numbers. So really depending on like your specific space, how much sunlight you get, what way your garden faces, if you get a lot of rain or you have something that covers some of it up, your plants are going to vary in terms of what you can grow. So it's really important to go to the garden center and specifically say where you want to put these plants and what you're looking for, and they can help you the best. Generally though, if you do have a garden space, perennials are great because you plant them once and then they bloom for most of the year, they die in the winter, but then they come back up again on their own the next year. So that's nice if you don't want to do a lot of work every single season. Annuals are good too if you want like an instant boost of color and you want to change it up every season, because those do bloom basically spring through fall and then they die and you have to replace them the next year. You also can definitely do faux plants outside, especially if you're working in a container or you want a plant that doesn't actually work very well with the climate that's around you. Faux plants are getting really good in terms of just how they look and their quality, and a lot of them now are also being made to be weather resistant so that they can stay outdoors. And then if you have a small space too, definitely think about things like vertical gardens, using small spaces. And we won't go super into vertical gardens today, but there's tons of information on the internet. If you just Google, there's like 11 million different ways to make one of these, and they all look really cool. Lighting can be tricky, like we mentioned a little earlier, especially since your outdoor space probably doesn't really have a ceiling to attach lights to. Maybe you have a balcony that has technically a ceiling above you, but you might have some regulations in terms of what you can attach and how, and so that makes even things like bistro lights kind of tricky. Luckily, a lot of lights can be strung on poles or attached to, with command hooks, and I'll actually talk about that a little more when I get to my own space. But think about also other ways that you can produce light in your space. You can definitely find some cool outdoor lanterns. The ones that you're seeing on your screen on the bottom left are from a Chicago-based company called Gold Leaf Design Group, and they're great because they look like they're paper, but they're actually made of like a resin, so they're really durable and can be plugged in outside. And then you can definitely use candles, but of course, just make sure you're following any sort of safety regulations. And if you can't have candles, you can always look into the flameless kind that are like little battery powered ones. Still a good way to set a mood in the evening without being dangerous or anything like that. And then accessories, the super fun part that everybody loves to do. This definitely like takes your space from your plan to really making it complete. It's inviting this way and just makes everyone want to come and use it. So definitely think about everything from your pillows and extra seating to, you're serving drinks in a tray. Again, you can use candles and things like that, or objects. Think about using outdoor artwork. A lot of companies make weatherproof or just really strong, durable design objects. You can even find like some artwork that's made out of maybe like nylon rope or things like that to hang somewhere. So there's lots of options. I think outdoor spaces are really becoming priorities for people, and so that's really driving a lot of the product. Okay, so that covers like our general process of going from a plan to accessories. And now what we would like to do is we want to share our own spaces and how we utilize that same plan. So Julie and Denise and myself all had totally different types of spaces. We all had different budgets, and we all utilized the same strategy. So first we're gonna see Denise's really awesome roof deck.
Thanks, Lydia. So it's a great space. It's about 1,600 square feet. There are some challenges that come with having that large a space, not that I'm complaining about the size, but like with our staging clients in those types of large outdoor areas, we always want to define different spaces. And we've lived in our condo for about 6 years and come to realize that parts of it are definitely underutilized. And it also have to take into account that it's very windy seasonally up there. It's a 5th floor walk up, and we found like a lack of comfortable furniture. We had chairs, but no sofa, nothing to lie down on, especially right now. That sounded really appealing. Had a budget of about $3,000. We were gonna buy several pieces of furniture. And my sources are all Target for the furniture and accents. We already own some CB2 planters, and I bought a few more of those. And I was very tempted by some of the CB2 furniture as well, but Target has great lines of outdoor brands, especially their in-house brands. Project 62 and Opal House have done just an amazing job every year, and I think they really stepped it up this season. So you can see on the left here, we were decked out for the 4th of July, several Adirondack chairs. These are actually great. They're just not comfortable over time. This is a wood finish look, but they're actually aluminum and rust resistant. And that also means they weigh like 100 pounds each, so they don't fly away, but not great long-term for lying on. And as you can see on the right, my daughter's making a cameo here, but there was underutilized space on the west side. So wanted to get a seating area there and repurpose some of the chairs from the east side over there. So we're looking to for comfort and like really making this a 3-ish season space. And I think anybody in California would think I'm nuts for saying that Chicago can be a 3-season space, but I really unless it's like 20 degrees or below, like we really try to go up there and use it. And right now I feel like we've had every possible season in the last month. So just want to make it as usable as possible. We did put tracks on the deck a few years ago. We had found that the wood decking just, it was like direct sunlight all the time. I mean, it just, we would have had to stain it and refinish it like every 3 months. That Trex is great, but it is a lot of gray, so we wanted to break that up. So I settled on a theme of like teal and blue, which you'll see. Used outdoor rugs to bring that up and sprinkled them throughout to designate the different areas and define them a bit more. Wanted to also like repurpose and relocate the older furnishings. They still work really well and are great for like larger gatherings we have on 4th of July. Primary furniture purchase, wanted to get a comfortable sectional for the main outdoor living space. And I have to say that has been a game changer, being able to lie down up there. Feels like real California living. And wanted to hop on the egg chair trend, got 2 of the swinging ones just for a fun factor. And added 2 colorful side chairs, which you'll see in a moment here, with a coordinating rope texture to the sectional, a fire pit for warmth and gathering, and a coffee table so we could kick our feet up. We also accessorized with some final touches. You know, my daughter's foraged for a bunch of large rocks on Chicago beaches and pulled in a bunch of fun accent pillows. So this sectional from Target is actually 5 different pieces, so you can use it a bunch of different ways. They're almost easier to use than a lot of the interior sectionals, where you kind of have to really nail down if you want a right side or left side long. And you can also pull out kind of the middle sections as like single chairs, or an end as a single chair. So tried out 2 different layouts here, kind of like how we play around with furniture and staging. I knew I was going to have a square coffee table. Texted Julie a couple of these, and we agreed the one on the right was the big winner. The layout just worked. It was more conducive to a square coffee table. And then if you can, yep. Here's the full after. So you can see that square coffee table on the left. Those teal chairs have like a great, that's like the plastic, when we're talking about the materials, rope texture. Super comfortable to sit in and like fun to play with. The side tables are like a black metal. Again, looking for like heavier weighted things up here. And then the coffee table is like a slate stone on there, also won't fly away. And put in a bunch of, you can see these colorful pillows, and really the material in these have come a long way. You would not believe that these could withstand getting wet. They really can. It's awesome. On the right, the 2 egg chairs, I will say that like I repurposed the ottomans from the Adirondacks, because like to get in and out of the chair, I don't know, you do need like kind of that leverage. And taken out for this shot, but these do need sandbags or they will tip over and kind of slide around the deck. So next step is figuring out how to make those look pretty. But it's been awesome to sit in these. At the back of the space on the left, you'll see defined a seating area here with another rug with teal and blue accents. And these smaller green and orange chairs I actually had inside as dining chairs. They're outdoor chairs from CB2. And I've gotten to the point where my daughter doesn't really spill at dinner, so could move to more comfortable chairs inside, and brought these up and repurposed these 2 blue Adirondack chairs that are, I do have a balcony. We don't really use it. So I brought it up to use up here. And then we'll have to fill those planters. And we repurposed the Adirondack chairs. You can see on the right, and kind of the long view is more like a resort style, like you're sitting on a porch. And now we just need it to stay consistently above like 50 degrees, and we can get planters filled. There's a shot here of our planters from last year. I do love huge pops of color. I tend to pick no more than 3 and then like sprinkle those colors throughout the deck. And I do tend to get annuals. I just am not very good at caring for these things, so I try to get something as easy as possible. I do always get these grasses because they look good year round. I mean, they look like straw-like in the fall and the winter, but it's nice to have some texture and something that appears alive in the dead of winter in Chicago. That's it for me.
Awesome. Denise, I just have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
So were there any like regulations? I see you have a fire pit on your roof deck. Did you have to like keep anything in mind when you were choosing which kind to use up there?
Yeah. Our building's pretty small, so we don't have like strict bylaws, but I want to be careful about fire. I know you can't have in Chicago like an open fire pit like on a roof deck with like actual wood. I had been very tempted by these fire pits at Target in the past few years and decided, given we're in quarantine, that I'd take advantage this year. It also allows it to be more of a 3-season space. One thing I will say about these is the propane tank actually sits exterior to these fire pits, although the Target inspiration photos would not have you realize that. So we've since had to go back and purchase a propane tank cover that also serves as a side table, so can minimize some costs there by not having to buy another side table, but definitely a factor to consider when purchasing these, because I think even the larger ones that sit taller can't store the propane in them, like a grill. It has to be like 40 inches away. So to keep it pretty, keep that in mind.
Good to know. And what materials did you go for your outdoor rug?
These ones are all polypropylene. So in that side you showed, they're more like the rug on the left side, the green and white one. And I will say, like, they dry, even with furniture on top of them and the deluge of rain we've had, they dry really quickly. I'm very impressed with them.
Nice.
Gonna hand it over to Julie for her balcony.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll be speaking to high-rise outdoor space and the challenges that come along with that, and also the wins that come along with it. But to start with, my challenges were that I had a small space. It was 6 by 6, 6 foot by 6 foot. So we really had to make sure that every single inch of our space was accounted for and had some kind of purpose, really lent itself to the design. My next challenge was the door positioning. So the door swings out, which means I lose all of the range of the door opening into my space. So I had to make sure that I was aware of what I could or couldn't bring in terms of depth on things or movement of pieces, and make sure that everything, again, would still keep its integrity with the design. I was also limited by my building's regulations, as I'm in a high rise, so I do have to make sure that what I put out there is an association of approved furnishings and that we stay within what's laid out for us by our building's bylaws. And lastly, my challenge was that the space was just very cold and uninviting. As you can see from the photo that Lydia had previously shown, it's just layers of gray. So the building is an aluminum gray, and then the concrete was a gray, and the steel that holds up the balcony glass is gray. So it was just a lot of the same thing, and it was just really not warm or inviting whatsoever. So those were what I was working against when I started my design palette. My budget for all in on my renovation was $760, and sources were from a little bit of all over the place, but I'll explain in my process here where they all come from. So that's our before photo, as you can see. So the balcony refresh was actually a surprise for my fiance, and I waited until he was out of town on a business trip and then pulled the space together, which was helpful. There was no challenges in the design choices that way, but he's always on board, and it was a good surprise for both of us to have something nice like this. But in step one, I really wanted to soften the space. So I did that by adding floor tiles to break up a lot of that monotonous gray in the building. But I'm a really big fan of floor tiles, and that's FLOR. If you're not familiar with them, they're the carpet tiles. They have a very thick rubber back and a really low pile fiber, and that can withstand a lot of the different weathers and temperatures and what we'd have to go through in Chicago. So they do really well outdoors. So I started by just putting down a layer of the black low pile floor tiles. The other perk to these is if I get a stain on any of the carpet tiles, I just have to replace the one tile. I don't have to replace the whole rug. So that's also very handy in keeping our cost low, but the investment is there and it's worth it long term. Secondly, I wanted to kind of define the space a little bit. So I layered on the white diamond rug to contrast the black of the floor tiles, but also to really define the space and make it feel a little bit more like an inside-outside space. Now, this rug is from Urban Outfitters. It is an indoor rug. So it's one that, you know, I was happy to use despite the fact that it's not an outdoor rug, because I do have 3 sides on my balcony space and a covered roof. So there's only one side that gets exposure. And with that limitation, I felt really comfortable with having an indoor rug in my outdoor space. After that, we wanted to go with our seating and what we could do to make the space comfortable. So ideally, I would have liked to have had 2 chairs and a side table, but given that the door was such an impact in our space and I wanted to keep everything really neat and tidy, I didn't want to have to shift chairs and move them out of the way of the door every time I wanted to go in or out. So we opted for a love seat. And while that did mean I would have to give up the side table in order to keep the love seat centered and not compromise having to shift it to one side or the other to accommodate a larger side table, I made up for that by flanking it with the greenery. And that's actually part of one of my steps is step 4 was the greenery. Now, all of my greenery is faux greenery. I cannot keep anything alive. But I got all of these plants at Target, and they have an excellent, to Denise's point, excellent selections available. Outdoor and faux greenery has come a long way over the last couple of years as well. There's plenty of really great agave looks, more palm looks. I'm a huge fan of the fiddle leaf, as you can see, I've got that. But you can get the various planters, different shapes and sizes. So keeping greenery, obviously, in an outdoor space is super helpful to liven it, but just choose different shapes, styles, and textures to really make the whole thing come together in a really positive way. And then the last point on that was the final touch, and that's very simple. We just wanted to go with one pillow. It's a pillow from Pier 1. They have a really great selection of outdoor pillows if you're looking or in the market. So just one pillow was all we really needed to set the space. And right after that, voila, we had this beautiful outdoor living space that was an extension of our living room. So the balcony door is right off of the living room space, and we're really big fans of keeping our door open and all the fresh air flowing. And having the love seat positioned on the farthest part from our doorway, it just really draws your eye outside, and it makes it feel like we have even more space to live in. So it's been an actual, like, real gem to have this, and we use it quite frequently. Although I think our biggest fan is the cat, who likes to sit outside and watch the birds more than anything else. But so that's basically how the space got pulled together.
So Julie, you mentioned that you had some building regulations to work with. Can you elaborate on like what kinds of things? Because I feel like high rises, I don't know how many floors your building has, but I'm sure it gets kind of limited.
Yeah, so we're in a 30-story high rise, and we have a lot of the same features that I think most high rises are going to have, and it's a lot for protection. Things like tenants can't alter the structure without having association approval, and that's just to keep the appearance of the building looking the same. But we can't use our balconies for storage. We can't have patio lights or heaters. No blinds or exterior awnings. So there were definitely limitations of things that we couldn't add into our outdoor space. No flower boxes can be added to the railings, no open fire pits. And then we had to be very judicious about what we were going to add in terms of the accessorizing, because tenants are responsible for any damage from items that are blown off of their balcony and any of the damage that it causes to wherever it lands. So those were things that I really had to keep in mind as I was pulling this thing together. I wanted to make sure everything had the right weight to keep it in its position and also keep everyone safe as well.
Good. And then you mentioned that the white rug on here is an indoor rug. So when it is a really bad storm or something, do you move it?
I don't. So again, with my space being covered on 3 sides and on the top, I feel confident in leaving it out there. What I do is I have it dry cleaned. So I take it every now and again and to just get cleaned to make sure that it still stays fresh and look. But one thing that works against me with high-rise living is storage. So I don't really have a place to pack up and roll things away. So I do leave it out there through all 4 seasons of Chicago weather.
Well, and it still looks good, so it must be working. All right, well, I'm gonna move to my space. So this is my patio space that I revamped. And, some challenges here are that it's a pretty good sized space in terms of length, but it's pretty narrow. So there really wasn't a lot of option in terms of like adding sort of dining or any large furniture. The length is good, but my door to my unit is kind of like right in the way. So there is only really one area where you could even really put things. And then the other big challenge, as you can see, is there's a really gross like dirt patch behind where you would be sitting. So you don't get to really look at anything pretty. The other way, thankfully, has like a tree and some ground ivy, but you can't really put any furniture where that is. So I really wanted to try to cover up the brown dirt. I wanted to sort of screen all those electrical panels and trees of our neighbors and things like that. And then the other big challenge is that it was a rental. And so, you want to do what you can to make it nice and enjoy it, but keep in mind that you can't change that much because you don't own it. And you also have to keep in mind, like, what am I going to take with me if I leave, and how much do I want to be out if I, for some reason, can't take stuff with me. So our overall budget was a max of $500, and we got everything from Target and Gethsemane Garden Center and Menards. So it's just me and my husband, and it's a small space, so we wanted to make it functional for the two of us, but we wanted to make sure we didn't overfill it, because when we do have people over, we sometimes pull our extra dining chairs out there to sit outside, and we wanted to just make sure we got rid of that dirt patch for sure. So the first thing we did was buying the furniture, which was in my before picture, because I forgot to take a picture of it when it was totally ugly, I guess. We used to just kind of pull out our camping folding chairs, so already the furniture from Target was an upgrade. And then we wanted to address the dirt patch. So my husband built these 2 garden container frames out of cedar. I had previously tried to plant things into the soil itself, but it just was so compacted and full of construction material that like nothing would grow. So we decided to build these. They do not have bottoms to them, so they're not like super, super heavy. You just kind of put that garden paper underneath kind of as your floor. And then we did have to sort of dig the soil out a little bit just to level it, because it was sloped before. So he made those. And then in the front, there was kind of this narrow separation between the 2 walls of stone. And you can't really dig that deep into there, just because if you dig too deep, some of the stone is going to fall out. So we didn't want to do that. So we dug probably only about 5 inches and layered it with pieces of cardboard. We did cardboard because we had learned that it would kind of help the moisture go through, but it would also eventually decompose. And so we wouldn't be putting something in there that would never go away. And then we lined it with a soil rock mixture and put in these plants that are actually perennial. So they come back on their own every year, and they're made to be ground cover. So they start really small and then they just kind of keep spreading. And I will say we did this originally last year, and these died in the winter, and they're back in full force now. They have grown, they're bigger than I've ever seen them. So they definitely stayed good even in such a small amount of soil. There it goes. And then we filled our planters. So we did annuals because we wanted to be able to switch up the color scheme the next year if we were staying, but also because we liked kind of the instant pops of color and just the ability to sort of design everything where it was going to go. So we tried to do some taller plants in the back to sort of make that screen, and hoped that as they got bigger, they'd fill it out even more, which did happen. And then we kind of moved forward in terms of height. So I tried to sort of create an effect that brought your eyes up. We filled those in. And then we also added a couple of potted plants to the area that we weren't really able to add furniture to. It just kind of helped that space feel like it was connected to the rest. So I really enjoyed having that as well. And then the last thing we focused on was our lights. So like I had said earlier, you really want to make sure you get the heavy duty stuff if you're going to be in a windy space. But the hard part is they are kind of heavy. And so figuring out how best to install them and keep them up was tricky. And we lost a couple of light bulbs in the process. But ultimately what we ended up doing was stringing it somewhat on the fence on the outside, which definitely was secure. But then I actually used outdoor command hooks on the brick. However, a command hook in itself, even if you get the waterproof kind, just isn't going to stick on brick. And so what we ended up doing was we used command hooks, but we attached them with something called Sugru, which is S-U-G-R-U. And if you've never heard of it before, it's kind of an amazing little invention. It's basically a little moldable adhesive silicone. So you get it in a packet, you kind of like mold it into however you want, and you stick the two things together, and then in 24 hours, it's like a full, solid, super durable rubber. And because this is a rental, I also have to figure out how to get it off, but luckily Subaru, you can just kind of take a utility knife to it and scrape it. So if my building was like painted, this probably wouldn't have been the greatest idea, but because it's just plain brick, I can take that utility knife and just get those off when I leave. I think that's all of mine. We've been really happy with the space. We definitely use it a lot in the summer. We have a little like baby grill on the other side that we use too. So we do eat outside sometimes.
I know you mentioned it's a rental and you're moving soon. Are you going to take those beds with you?
Probably not. And I debate about it because there's a lot of soil in them. So that was the other thing, like we stayed on budget, but we definitely underestimated how much soil you would have to purchase to fill a container that size. So took a couple different trips to Menards to get them full, which would cost us a little more than we had anticipated. I feel like, I have an outdoor space because I bought a house, so I have a yard now, but I don't really have a plan for it yet. And I feel like it might not include these garden beds. So they will be gifted to the next tenant. Hopefully we can fill them with something nice. Okay, so that's it for today. I'm gonna quick check the chat in a minute, but first I just wanna make sure you all know about our next sessions. So next week we're going to be talking about refreshing a space that's inside rather than outside, and that's going to include things like finding how to decide what your design style is and also the process of planning your space. And then make sure you check out the other ones we have this month about artwork and lighting, which are two things that I think people really get stuck on sometimes, and so we'll have some info about that. So let me just check the chat a second, make sure there weren't any questions that I missed. Otherwise, thank you all so much for coming. We hope you enjoyed it and had some inspiration. And I know it's rainy today, but hopefully we get some consistent good weather and you can get your space ready and enjoy it.
Awesome. Thanks, Lydia.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.